All right, I am happy once again to be joined by Brandon Sneed, a writer for Dairyland Express, also host of Cut the BS, as well as your own podcast. You co-host with Rhino, covering the Packers. Like I said, the last time you are covering, you have your feet or your toe in every single sport in Wisconsin. I don't know if you do Badgers talk, but I feel like that's probably your next step.
I do. Yep, I
You
do.
do?
Part of Cut the BS. We talk all Wisconsin, all
Okay.
sports, no BS.
There you go. There you go. No BS. So that's why I love having you on, especially when it comes time to talk about the Brewers. And this is part 4 in the series that you and I are doing, going over your top 3 Brewers at each position. We've previously covered catcher, first base. Last week we did second base. And today we are going to talk about the Brewers' top 3 shortstop in Brewers history. So again, like every week, you don't give me the list prior. So I'm always interested to see what kind of drama you're going to stir up with who you decide to pick, which is fine. If you have a difference of opinion, leave that in the comment section. We do appreciate that. Also, give us a like button. It does allow other people to see your content. If you're listening to this on anywhere you find your podcast, we do have a YouTube channel if you'd like to see Brandon and my smiling faces. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we do have a podcast. All right, Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, man. I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you on. All right. So the last time you were on, we were talking about second baseman in Brewers history. Today, we're talking about the top 3 shortstops. Let's just dive right in there. Who is your number 3 shortstop in Brewers history?
Number 3, just like the second baseman, just like the first baseman and catcher, wanted to pick somebody that I, obviously that fit the bill, but somebody that I grew up watching. That was a part of my fandom, and I went with Jose Valentin. 96 was probably his best year. I think was definitely his best year in Milwaukee. 26 home runs, 95 RBIs, and an 811 OPS. Those numbers stick out at any position for anybody, current, past, present, like it don't matter. But the one thing that really kind of stuck out for me, and for a shortstop, all 6 seasons he spent in Milwaukee, he hit double figures when it came to home runs.
Gone forever, Aaron Hernandez. Gone forever, Donald Sterling.
You know, that's about as consistent as it can get when it comes to a shortstop. Jose Valentin, if you are familiar with him, he's not a very big dude. So to have those power numbers, those consistent numbers, defensively, he was pretty good, above average. That was my number 3.
Yeah, Puerto Rican.
Yep.
So represent the PR. All right. Yeah, so to your point about his time in Milwaukee, he also had a really good career, 16 seasons in the majors, 8 with Milwaukee, 5 with the White Sox, 2 in New York, and 1 with the Dodgers. He had a really good career overall, but if we just focus on what he did when he was here in Milwaukee, he batted .240, never had a high batting average, but you talked about the power that he had. He was consistently hitting double-digit home runs. He had one season with 95 RBIs, and then he had another season with 92. That was with Chicago, though. But then he had 58, 49, 38. So he had one good season, but he was never like inconsistent or unproductive. He was always just that solid overall shortstop, and he provided some consistency to that position to the Brewers. And I think that's kind of something hard to find nowadays in any position for any team, somebody who can stick around for several years. Right now, we're kind of hoping that that's going to be Willy Adames' spot for the next several years. And I feel like if we ever redo this, hopefully he will be on that list, because if he can provide what he did last season for several years consistently, for sure he's going to be on this list at some point as one of the best Brewers shortstops. Great pick at number 3.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking over my lists from the ones that we have done, and they are very eerily similar, especially second baseman.
Oh no, yeah, but before you mentioned that they were
the way that they're constructed for myself. the eras are all matching up so far.
Got you. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Who was your number 2 shortstop in Brewers history?
So if you tuned in to the second baseman, you knew that Ricky Weeks was my number 2, and there may trigger some controversy and just some friendly quote unquote discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I went with his counterpartner in JJ Hardy for my number 2. His best season in Milwaukee, 26 home runs, 80 RBIs. That's pretty good. Remember, he came up with Ricky Weeks as well as Prince Fielder and Corey Hart and Ryan Braun. So they're like that core of Brewers that came up, really changed, from 2008 was a turning point in the franchise. Now you remember, before 2008, we haven't sniffed a playoff appearance in 26 years. This group that came up together, Ryan Braun, Prince Fielder, JJ Hardy, Ricky Weeks, those guys, Corey Hart, that changed the cultural in Milwaukee. Like it just did. It was a shift for Brewers fans to have that young talent finally be there, come up and produce. JJ Hardy was that guy. They obviously made the playoffs in 2008. Like I mentioned, that year he had 24 home runs, batting 8 with an 821 OPS. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. I think he, as a Brewers fan, Willy Adames is probably going to be up there, but JJ Hardy may have the best arm I've ever seen in Milwaukee. I mean, it was about as secure of an arm as you'll ever see. You knew where the ball was going to go every time he threw it. He won a couple Gold Gloves after he left Milwaukee. At the time that he was in Milwaukee and the prime that he was in Milwaukee for, it was a crowded NL side as far as the shortstop went. He probably could have won a few Gold Gloves here. He obviously didn't. Went out to Baltimore. He won a few. I think it was 3 after he left Milwaukee.
3 Gold Gloves, 1 All-Star appearance.
Yeah. So a couple Gold Gloves, a few Gold Gloves after he left here. But man, that dude was about as solid. His bat wasn't always that great. He hit in the 2-hole a lot for his time in Milwaukee. Which anybody that knows baseball, like the 2-hole's not going to, they're not going to provide a whole lot of pop. For him to have 26, 24 home runs in his 2 best years here, that's pretty good. And like I said, defensively, in my opinion, I didn't get to see Robin Yount or Jim Gantner or these guys or Cecil Cooper play. Defensively, he may be the best player I've ever seen play in a Brewers uniform outside of maybe like Lorenzo Cain.
Yeah, and you talk about he had a 13-year career, and talk about his time here in Milwaukee. He had 5 years with Milwaukee. Obviously, he was very successful in Baltimore with the Orioles, part of a couple good teams that went to the playoffs with that team. But just looking at his time in Milwaukee, his first season wasn't the most successful season. He had 9 home runs, 50 RBIs. But if you look at his following seasons, starting in 2007, he was an all-star. He had 26 home runs, 80 RBI. He had the next year 24 home runs, 74 RBI. The next season, 11 home runs, 47 RBI. And he never was his batting average kind of fluctuated with the seasons. He had good years and bad years, but he was always had that power. And especially in Baltimore, he had some huge home runs numbers. He had 31 year, 22, 25. He was a Silver Slugger the year that he was an All-Star as well as Gold Glove winner. But yeah, for what he did in Milwaukee, and you talk about being one of the best players currently that you and I can remember watching. He had some of the best plays, very good arm that you talked about as well. Very solid choice for number 2.
Yeah, it was, and it kind of matched up. My number 2 second baseman was a guy that was in the 90s, My number 2 shortstop and second baseman were guys that were in the mid 2000s or later 2000s. And then my number 1 also matches up with that as well.
Before your number 1, Hardy ranks second in FWAR among the Brewers' all-time shortstops and third behind Yount and Valentine in BWAR. So he productively, looking statistically, he was very productive. As a shortstop, top 3 in WAR, FWAR and BWAR. All right, who was your number 1 overall?
I don't think this is up
who's
for
your number 1 shortstop?
I don't think this is up for discussion outside of Hank Aaron. He's probably the greatest Brewer. I shouldn't say probably. He probably is the greatest Brewer outside of Hank Aaron. Robin Yount. I mean, I could stop right there and people would be like, yeah.
Yep.
You're probably right. 3,000 hits, 3-time All-Star. 82, they obviously go to the World Series. Everybody knows the story. 29 home runs and 114 RBIs at the shortstop position. 46 doubles that year, batting a 957 OPS. I mean, that is just incredible. The guy, Nick, just unbelievable. Again, like JJ Hardy and Ricky Weeks and Prince Fielder and Corey Hart, that 82 team was very similar to that for the Milwaukee Brewers. Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Cooper, Gantner, they all came up together. They all played together for a long time, but it's hard to have really anybody else not even close to what Robin Yount was, not only at that position, but realistically, the franchise as a whole.
All-time leader in games, runs, hits, extra base hits, RBIs, and walks. You can just look through his whole career, 20 seasons. And I said this before, if you're with a team for 20 seasons, like, you're doing something great.
Yeah.
You look at his home runs in the 80s. He really had a couple really good seasons with a ton of home runs, 23, 10, 29, 17, 16, consistently in double digits with home runs. He was an all-star several years, MVP votes. He was a silver slugger. He got MVP votes in 80, 81, 82, 83, 4 straight years of getting MVP votes. So you're consistently one of the best players in all of baseball if you're getting 4 straight seasons with MVP votes, and then 3 more seasons of straight MVP votes in 87, 88, and 89, again with the Silver Slugger award. So throughout his career, he was incredibly consistent. He was incredibly productive. You look at his home runs, you look at his RBIs, you look at all the statistics that he is the number one in, and he's like you said, he's arguably one of the best Brewer to ever wear the uniform. And I wish like I obviously didn't see much of him. I mean, his last couple of years, I was a toddler, so I didn't really get to enjoy him as a player. But just to be able to look back at what he's done and what he did, he had an incredible career with the Brewers, and arguably the number one shortstop in all of Brewers history.
You could argue player. I mean, really could. You could. And Hank Aaron will be up there, but realistically, you could.
And if you're up there with Hank Aaron, like if you're debating like who's better, Hank Aaron, like, again, like, you're doing something right. These are some of the top players in baseball history, not even just Brewers history. Like, looking at his career, I would die for a 20-year major league career with double-digit home runs, RBIs, and all that he had. So yeah, great pick at number one. Again, I don't think anybody can argue that he was the best shortstop in Brewers history. He's probably up there with some of the best shortstops in baseball history. I would probably have to take a deep dive into kind of who has been out there, but just looking at the numbers based off that, like, there's an argument to be made. He's one of the best shortstops ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so go ahead real quick and wrap it up. Give me your 3 picks one more time.
Yep. Number 3, Jose Valentin. And obviously in the mid 90s, 96 was his best year, 26 home runs, 95 RBIs, batted 811 OPS. My number 2 is JJ Hardy. We talked about his Gold Gloves after he left Milwaukee. Probably should have won a few in Milwaukee. His best season in Milwaukee, 26 home runs, 80 RBIs. They obviously made the playoffs for the first time in 26 years, as JJ Hardy was the starting shortstop over there. And then number 1, Mr. 3000, 82 World Series, 3-time All-Star. The accolades for him go a mile down the road. But his best season, 29 home runs, 114 RBIs, 46 doubles with a 957 OPS. Just speaks for himself. Robin Yount's my number 1.
Perfect. All right. Brandon, I want to thank you again for coming on. Like I said before we started, like, I always appreciate you coming on here, giving me your time, talking some Brewers. I know you are a busy man with your multiple podcasts, you're writing. You always have something going on. So like I said, I do appreciate you taking the time out. And if you're watching this on YouTube, again, leave a comment in the comment section, leave who your top 3 shortstop are, Facebook or Reddit, wherever you're watching this, Twitter. Brandon, tell us where we can find you and your works.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter, up on the screen right there if you're able to see it. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. Weekly articles over at dairylandexpress.com, part of the Fansided family. And then also I do a couple podcasts, one on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. for the Packers, the South End Zone podcast, and every Thursday at 7 p.m. Cut the BS. It's a solo podcast by just me. I have a bunch of different guests throughout the course of a year. We talk about all Wisconsin sports, no BS, and it's a ton of fun. So
love it.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and I'll talk to you next week when we go over the Brewers' top 3 third basemen.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Have a good